I give some examples. The dumping of agricultural commodities at prices lower than the cost of production is devastating to developing countries, since most depend almost entirely on only one or a few products. Take cotton, for example. U.S. heavily subsidizes our cotton growers to keep the price of cotton down. Here are 3 different countries in Africa whose economies depend on producing cotton. For instance, in Burkina Faso, 85% of their population are involved in cotton farming. The price of a pound of cotton in those countries is only a third of what it takes to produce in America. But because of agricultural subsidies, by the time they get to the open market, they cannot match our price. And so they're priced out of the market. This is the dollar amount of lost revenue in 1 year, 2001 to 2003, in each of these countries. It's in millions of dollars. You might say, well, 43 million, that's nothing. Maybe here, it's nothing. Not to them. That's 12% of their GNP lost, because they can't match subsidized cotton from the West. Oh, there's a lot to think about here. Boy, I'll tell you what, waiting for the government to solve this problem is a real forlorn thing. The U.S. government has shown right throughout its entire history that it's motivated really by 2 things: dollars and cents. And that's how you get elected, and that's what people expect of their elected people, is to bring the money back home and not to be giving it away to other people and not to be using it to help those other people. It's our interest, it's the U.S.'s own interest. And this is why, it doesn't matter who we put in there, I don't think this is going to change much. Hopefully it will. We should fight for that. I'm not just being cynical here and saying forget about it and not to fight for just laws and so forth, but don't hold your breath, all right? Don't hold your breath. I don't put much trust, frankly, in the world system to solve the problem of poverty. And really, God doesn't put much trust in it either. He didn't put it on them. He put it on us, His followers. We're the ones that are supposed to do this. Now, people in secular governments don't follow God. That's not why they're there. Why should they care? They don't even have the same basis that we do. We've got to take this problem on personally. And so we understand what he means in Proverbs 13 when he says, abundant food is in the fallow ground of the poor, but it is swept away by injustice. And you just saw multiple examples of that very thing right in those facts and figures. A second complicating factor is that a lot of the underlying causes for poverty are spiritual, actually. Poverty is a material and a systematic problem, but it's also a spiritual problem. People that work with the poor are well aware that in many cases, the more you give, the more booze is going to be bought, the more weapons are going to be bought. It's not going to go to upgrade life whatsoever. The more illegitimate children are going to be fathered. And what are those? We think of vast armies of prostitutes and illegitimate children in poor communities. That's a spiritual problem. That's a spiritual issue. Why would somebody not get pregnant? Why would somebody not live for booze or dope, heroin? For spiritual reasons. These are moral principles. So there's a need here not just to change the external material status of families, but to change the internal spiritual status of those same families. If we want lasting relief from poverty. One of the biggest reasons for poverty in Africa today is war. We simply cannot even get relief in because it's too dangerous to go into certain areas. farmers cannot farm because there's too many people being killed. That's a moral issue, a spiritual issue. Dealing with things like hostility and warfare. Then there's the history of Western intervention, which has raised so many suspicions and cynicism in poor countries, including, in some cases, in many cases, Christian missions. At times, regrettably, the mission has seemed to be more to export European culture than it was to export the love of Jesus Christ. And, frankly, not as bad as it's often portrayed. Actually, there's a lot of exaggeration on this. Desmond Tutu said of South Africa, he said something that's really not fair, but it's kind of funny. He says, when the missionaries came here, they had the Bibles and we owned the land. We bowed our heads with them in prayer, and when we opened our eyes, we had the Bibles and they had the land. Well, like I say, it's not really fair. Most of the people that seized and bought up South Africa were commercial interests that had come there, nothing to do with anything to do with missions. As a matter of fact, if you travel in these countries, you'll see for yourself the only hospitals there, the only places people can get food and care, the only schools in many of these countries are the ones put there by Christian missions. As a matter of fact, taken as a whole, the modern Christian missionary movement has been easily the greatest, most benevolent act of giving in the history of the world. There is nothing even remotely close to an example of so many millions of people giving away so much and going to live among the people to personally help them, often at the expense of their own lives and health, to do good for others. So I think it's frankly pretty nauseating when we see the guy sit back in his couch with his little champagne glass and to pontificate about, I just think these pristine cultures should be left on their own. We don't need to be going in there and arrogantly thinking that we are their saviors and we should just let them be. Yeah, well, that's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, I expect you to clothe and feed these people and take care of them.